Hello everyone, and welcome to Dallas Hoops Fancast. I'm your host Sydney, and I'm here with my co-host Martin.
Hey guys.
We're on the internet at DallasHoopsCast.com. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star rating would be very much appreciated, if you feel we deserve it at least. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed and join the conversation in the comments. And by the way, if you want to listen to our post-game shows, actually Martin's post-game show,
Our post-game show?
Well, I sometimes join it, but that's a different show, Dallas Hoops Gamecast. So if you want to listen to those, search for and follow Dallas Hoops Gamecast. It's on all of the same podcast streaming platforms that Fancast is available on. Okay, let's get started. We're going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly from this past week of games. And to be honest with you, despite the fact that they went 2-2, I didn't really have an ugly, even though I think the Warriors blowout was kind of ugly.
That immediately came to my mind when you said the word ugly, so
for some reason,
I'm a little surprised you blew that off.
I don't know, for some reason it's just like not a big deal to me right now, which I think is part of the fan roller coaster that I enjoy so much. To me, the Mavericks are never going to lose again, pretty much. So that's where we're at right now. So let's start with the good.
They're good. Their offense is better. Their offense is starting to look like They're still dead last in three-point shooting, but they are just a few percentage points behind. I think it's Minnesota from being dead last to being second to dead last. So, they got a long way to go, but their offense is starting to look like they did last year. Now their defense looks worse than last year, but at least their offense is getting there.
So in the last 5 games, the Mavericks are 13th in offensive rating. In the last 4 games, so this week when they went 2-2, they're 7th in offensive rating. And I think you saw that in the games. Their offense looked a lot better.
The 3 just started dropping a little bit more frequently.
Yeah, so also in these last 5 games, they're 20th in three-point percentage. So,
hey, it's not last.
Yeah, it's not last. So that's the good, is that the Mavericks are no longer last in three-point shooting, at least over the past 5 games.
I would say they're also healthy. And even Maxey, who was the last guy to come back against that Warriors, he's still struggling laterally defensively. He doesn't have that quite burst laterally when he's guarding a guard or something. But his three-point shot is going down, and he looks like he's getting his legs under him.
Yeah, I think their offense, it just looks a lot better. They're moving better. Now, they still have games like the Warriors blowout where they're stagnant. So there's still some inconsistency even on offense, but at least it's looking a little bit better. I also like that they're trying different things. And we talked about this in our post-game episode after this past Warriors game. Like the tighter rotations, Carlisle is playing 7 or 8 guys instead of all 20 of them 15 minutes. I like that.
I like that because you can see the sense of urgency that Carlisle has. And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
I agree with you 100% on that. The rotations have been getting tighter, and I think it's just because it's playoff mode now. Like, they have to start winning games or they're going to find themselves out of the playoffs this year. Yeah,
and that's one thing that I've disliked about Carlisle is that he just has to play every guy on the roster, and they all have to get at least 15 minutes. And it's like, some of these guys should not be playing, but he just really likes playing everyone. And so he's really tightened the rotations. And again, like you said, it's good because you're putting your best players on the court all the time.
Well, some of these guys that they got coming off the bench just haven't produced consistently. Trey Burke has been up and down. And again, I've said long ago that Trey Burke is not the kind of player that can produce every single game. He's the kind of guy that if you randomly just need some energy, you throw him out there and he can go out there and produce. But to expect him to be a key role player when he's never done that his entire career. In fact, when he's been asked to do that, he's been out of the league.
Yeah.
So you can't afford to play a Burke and a Johnson and a Cauley Stein and a Josh Green because they're such negatives when they're out there on the court, and the the lead, or even if the starting lineup doesn't have a lead, they're keeping the game close. It just disappears when those guys come into the game.
I do like Willie Cauley-Stein, but I mean, he's not like an amazing player. So
well, he's just his effort.
Yeah, it's so inconsistent.
And it's, when he has full effort and he's fully engaged, he's an adequate player. But you just never know when he's going to do that, and you just can't afford to wait on him. Yeah.
Another change that we saw, before the COVID stuff, but they're going back to it, is Hardaway is coming off the bench. And I really like that. Again, we dug into this in the post-game pod, but I'll say it here too, that I just think that role works so well for him, because whenever he's in the starting lineup, you have to rely on him for offense, and he doesn't always bring it, or he just doesn't always have it every game. So to have him coming off the bench, then he becomes more of a luxury, because if he is on fire that night and he does have a good game, it's like, oh yes, now we have 25, 30 points coming off the bench. Otherwise, when he's in the starting lineup, that can kind of be a liability for you. So I like that adjustment.
Well, and I still think that's I agree 100%. And it still shows a little bit of the flaw the Mavericks have, because in a way they still are dependent on Hardaway getting 17 to 20 points and being efficient. And it would be nice for the Mavs to get to a point where they don't have to rely on Hardaway, where he can truly become that luxury who can come in on a game and just win it by himself. And they're not quite there yet, because they haven't figured out the other playmaker piece that they have to get. But that's a perfect role for him on this team.
Yeah. They're also doing some things to get Kristaps involved, the way that he moves off the ball. And some of that might be scheme. Some of that might be Kristaps just kind of figuring out his role. But they're making some adjustments there with the way that they use him on offense. And just overall, the reason why this is good to me is because, like you said earlier, it shows a sense of urgency. And that's what gets frustrating, I think, for fans, is when you're having a bad season or you're losing a lot of games and there's just no change. It's the same thing every single game. It's so vanilla. And so to see these actual coaching decisions, I really like that.
We still doing the good, bad, and ugly? Because we kind of got stuck there.
We're on the good.
Okay.
This is the good.
All right.
Do you want to move on
Let's
to the bad?
Let's move on to the bad.
Well, okay, so that was my good. And then also one more good. They're 2-2, so at least they tried like half the time, which I think is an improvement from just
I thought
not
the Phoenix
trying at
game
all.
They tried. They just lost late in the game.
True,
and because Chris Paul decided he wanted to have the best game of the season against us. Has been a recurring theme, but
at least he's, it kind of makes sense. It's not like Kelly Oubre going off for 40 points. And so the bad is kind of along those same lines of inconsistent effort. I think in this week you had some great games. Like that Phoenix game was pretty good. The Atlanta game was, man, they were locked in and focused, and they actually had a game plan geared towards that team.
And they executed it pretty well.
The second Warriors game was good, but then they had some inconsistent effort, even within those games where you had the first Warriors blowout. So it was good, but they still sometimes feel like they don't have to, it looks like they feel like they don't have to show up, and that hopefully doesn't continue, but we kind of saw it.
Yeah, I would say the bad for me is the Mavs bench rotation. We talked about how they're tightening up the bench.
Yeah.
A lot of that is based on necessity because they don't have a lot of depth. And I know people were talking about the depth of this Mavericks team. Derek Harper says it every game, this Mavs team is so deep, and they're really not.
Yeah,
and we can see that. They can only go 8 deep right now, because if they go any further, then the score just really starts to tilt towards the other team. So I think that's been ugly or bad for me, because they got to figure out something. I don't know if it's a minor move. What's funny is Derrick Rose got traded for Dennis Smith. And I was like, if that's all it took to get Derrick Rose, I feel like the Mavericks could have boosted their depth and got Derrick Rose.
Yeah, I mean, for that trade, you could say either they got nothing for Derrick Rose because Dennis Smith Jr. doesn't even play.
Yeah.
Or you could say, okay, maybe they see him as a promising young player that just needs another opportunity. But in that case, I still think a guy like Jalen Brunson or
I wouldn't trade Jalen Brunson for Derrick Rose right now.
Oh, okay.
Because I think you can get more. But I think you could have given them a second-round pick for Derrick Rose.
Yeah, I guess so. It depends on
Trey Burke.
Yeah, it depends on why they wanted Dennis Smith Jr. You know, if it was just to get rid of Derrick Rose, then you probably could have given them anything.
I don't think Detroit has any interest in Dennis Smith Jr.
They probably, they'll take a chance on him. They're having a crappy season.
Chance, yeah,
probably. Yeah,
but
probably.
I don't think they have any interest in Dennis Smith. They probably just did the trade more as a favor to Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if Dennis Smith even finishes the season on the Pistons.
Interesting.
He's just not a good player. And I know I see him on Twitter, free Dennis Smith, like he's been trapped there. Like he's this great talent that can't get on the court. The dude's not any good. Can we finally accept that?
Well, so anyway, your point was...
Yeah, I'm making my points.
Anyways, what was your point?
The Mavs need depth.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, some of that might be just...
You could have got Derrick Rose for a bag of chips.
Yeah, basically. Okay, there's another point about them being inconsistent. And I've seen kind of people wondering, like, who are the real Mavericks? Is it the ones that we see when they're playing well, and minus whatever issues come up that make them not play well? And to me, like, I think these are the real Mavericks. The inconsistent team, like, that is who they are at this point. And all the losses that they have for whatever reason, unfortunately, that is also part of who they are.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would agree to an extent, but there is a case to be made that a lot of their losses were due to the fact that they were without so many guys. And maybe, and I'm not making any excuses, but maybe some of that lack of quote-unquote effort was the ridiculous schedule that they were playing at that stretch. But that's just an excuse. For me, the team is last year's team. They're the same team as last year. Maybe not as good, but they're the same. So for me, they're a 7th seed in the Western Conference, 8th seed depending on other teams that are in the West, how they're doing that year. But because of the COVID thing, they really have to fight back in to get into the playoffs, and I we'll see if they make it. But to me, they're last year's team. They didn't really make any changes. They didn't get anybody else.
So when you say their like quote unquote lack of effort is because they were missing so many guys,
no, I mean,
are you saying? Do you mean like their energy level was affected, like they were tired physically because of the schedule?
I do believe that. Now, again, I'm not making any excuses because there is no excuse for lack of effort. Mm-hmm. I think they used it as an excuse, and part of it was because the Mavericks they create this atmosphere about rest, back to back, and health of players and rest. So they are almost giving, and then this year they talked about the schedule and how hard it's going to be and how much they have to travel.
A back to back is basically a loss. They
made all their complaints before the season even started. It gave the players an out. Maybe. In my opinion. Maybe it was subconscious. Maybe I have no idea what the heck I'm talking about. But the Mavericks have created this atmosphere about playing time and back-to-backs and playing too much to where it's bad and evil if you do.
Well, it's like impossible to win. Like this game doesn't even count.
Exactly.
And it's a back-to-back.
I think that contributes sometimes to their lack of effort. It's not an excuse. It's a lack of effort is what it is. But there are some explanations.
Yeah, like I would say there was a game, it might have been the Warriors, where I didn't expect them to win. That's happened a few times this past month, where I was like, this team is just better. Like, I don't expect them to win this game. But you don't want to get blown out by 20 or,
31.
Whatever these losses were. And I think that's when I see like, okay, they're not good enough. Even if they played their best, they just don't have enough talent to beat this other team, especially while missing these guys. But the effort on defense or the focus or the mistakes, that's when I see that inconsistency where I think that's who they are. Win or lose, whoever is playing, that's what I see.
Yeah, and you're not going to win every game. But there's been some losses that the Mavericks have. They've had some losses this year where you're like, okay, you lost. Like the Milwaukee game.
Even the Suns game.
Yeah, the Suns game, both of them, really. You played well and just didn't execute at the end of the game. Those are going to happen. But they've had too many games, Chicago, both of their games, for example, where they just
didn't
decide to play. Utah, I think both of those games, they didn't even come to compete.
Maybe the Warriors game once it got
out of hand, like once
yeah.
Golden State got a double-digit lead, I think they just kind of were done.
It's like I've said, I think is in our last episode, it's like sometimes they feel like they're better than the other team and they don't have to show up, and it's just like, I don't know where you got that idea, but it's just not true.
And they've have a real bad habit this year of playing down to their opponent.
Yeah.
Like now, because of their record, it's hard to say that they were playing down because they have the same record as these teams that were beating them. But before the season started, we expected them to beat the Chicago Bulls both times and the Hornets both times. I think they had some other bad losses in there that we expected them to beat. And Phoenix, for example, we were 0-3 against them. I know they got better, but the way we had hyped up this season by national analysts and internally, that we at least should have been 2-1 against them. And it just hasn't gone that way.
Yeah, so this is where I say that you are what your record says you are. And so, like, those losses against those teams, you could say, well, those teams turned out to be better than we thought, or whatever happened. But it's because the Mavericks were inconsistent, or because they didn't show up. This is like, you created who you are. Any crazy things that happened in those losses, that's part of your identity too.
Yeah, I mean, I would, again, it's such a weird season.
It is, yeah, and I acknowledge that.
They had 4 key starters, 4 rotation guys out for like 10 games. It's really hard to judge this team. I don't think they're a very good team. I think if they were fully healthy, they would have been 7th, 8th again in the Western Conference. Yeah. So that's not, but
they're not this bad.
But they're not this bad. Yeah. I don't think.
I'll give you that. What do you think about Kristaps this week? We talk about him like almost every single week. What do you think? What did we see this week? Any encouraging signs? How do you feel about his performances?
I don't like it.
Really?
I don't like
at all.
No, I don't. I don't like his defense. I don't like his disposition. I don't think he's happy here. The comments that he's made now, nobody's really making them a big deal, but to me, they say a little bit more than it's being, talked about.
Like the
situation with his minutes. And look, if you want to have that conversation with Carlisle,
which he did,
yes, but that's where it should have ended. It should never have became public that that's what you did. For me, either A, you made a mistake and you went public, which I think is a load of crap, because a player in his position, you know how the media operates. At this point in your career, you know what you should say and what you should not. Yeah. So for me, by him saying publicly he's asked Carlisle for longer stretches and not to be taken out in the first quarter at the 7-minute mark, he was putting pressure on Carlisle, kind of forcing his hand to do that. I don't know that for certainty, but that's just the way it appeared to me.
It is weird that he said it publicly.
Yes. Yeah. And I just thought that was unacceptable. The other thing is, he said after the Warriors game, I thought, the first Warriors game where they got blown out by 31. And we were watching the game, and it was 3 after 3 after 3 after even more threes than this team. This team shoots a lot of threes. But in that game, we were like, for crying out loud, because somebody drive to the basket once, but they just kept shooting them. And in his post-game comments, he said, well, that's what we do. That's our game. We shoot threes. And I thought it was a shot at their game plan and the way their offense is. And the reason I think that is because we've seen all the stuff around his post-ups and inside and the shots that he likes and his game and
the storyline.
All of that, all created because he wasn't getting the shots that he wants to get in this offense. So I think that also, and then I watched the highlights of the Warriors game, the second one, like 52 times.
That's what we do when they win now.
And I've seen this before from him. But in this one, I saw it again, and I just thought it was ridiculous. But Luka the shot clock's going down, so he shoots a step back, and you see Porzingis' arms and shoulders just drop in sheer disappointment, like he thought it was a bad shot, and he was tired of it. Now Luka made the shot, but it was just the whole disposition. I don't like it. I don't like the whole vibe that I'm getting from Porzingis right now.
So
I know that was really long-winded, and I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I agree with you about his statements. I think that the one about his minutes was just weird. Like, you don't usually say stuff like that to the public. And then also the one about, well, that's our scheme. Like, that's what we do. That's our game plan. I noticed the tone in his voice. I also thought it was a little, I don't know, iffy. However, for me, when I watch the games, I'm okay with the way that he's playing right now. And he seems to be doing all the right things to contribute to winning. So, I mean, I guess as long as they can keep that internal and deal with it and whatever, maybe as long as they win, he'll be happy. That's kind of like their problem. But for me, just watching the games, I feel like he's starting to move a little better within the offense. He's getting better shots in his spots. So I thought that was an improvement.
For me, that's not what he wants to do, though.
Probably,
It's not. What he wants is kind of old school Dirk Nowitzki, early aughts, give the ball to him at the elbow or the side and let him do a turnaround brick. Because that's all he can do right now anyways. But that's the game he wants. He wants to play a Dirk Nowitzki style where he's getting the ball in the mid-range and creating shots.
Well, and he's used to being a star. And he's not even really the second star here. Like, I
not
mean,
in this offense.
Yeah, not in this offense. And I don't even know if he could be that. Like, we talked about that last week. But yeah, he's not really a star in this offense, I don't think.
So, to me, I don't think he's happy here. I don't think he is happy with his role on the offense. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, come on. I don't think that's a secret. Like, based on all the noise that has come around from
we kind of know how he feels about things.
I don't think he likes the offense that the Mavericks run. I've seen him several times when Luka shoots a step back. He looks dejected and irritated, and he just thinks it's a bad shot. The sucky thing for him is every time I see him do that, it happens to go in. But no, I'm not happy with the whole Porzingis situation.
Yeah, I think I'm not worried yet because I still think he's trying to make it work on the court. However, you brought up some things with his offense and his defense, and we talked about his struggles on defense. And I wondered how much of this is because of his injuries maybe still affecting him. So I got in touch with a doctor of physical therapy, Dr. Raj from 3CB Performance. Some of you are probably following him on Twitter. He's going to join us now to talk about Kristaps' injury history and if these deficiencies we're seeing from KP are a result of those. Dr. Raj, welcome to the show and thanks for joining.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So you've done on your YouTube channel, 3CB Performance, you did 2 pretty good videos breaking down Kristaps' 2 knee injuries. He tore his ACL and then he had a torn meniscus. First of all, just what impact do injuries like that have on a player's body, both short-term and possibly long-term?
Sure. I mean, so it depends, of course, on the severity of the injury. We know with an ACL, it can take 18 months to 24 months trying to get back to pre-injury levels of performance. So he's already dealing with that. And then, in the short term, with that injury, it's something where you've lost a lot of muscle mass, you've lost a lot of mental confidence. So it's going to affect you with the reacclimation period. Although I will say, before the meniscus injury, he was looking pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then he has the meniscus tear. Key thing on that is that he got a repair, which means which not everyone is eligible for. It depends on where exactly the tear is and how bad it is. And so in the short term with the repair, it takes longer because you have to actually repair the tissue and let it heal. So the knee is immobilized for longer. Mm-hmm. But then in the medium and long term, it's actually better outcomes because you still have that tissue intact.
Yeah, I remember in your video about his meniscus talking about how he was kind of fortunate because it wasn't as serious as it could have been. And you also talked about when you did a video on his torn ACL, how it would probably take him about 2 years to get back to full capacity, which is kind of exactly what we saw. Have you noticed any mental residual effects because of those injuries, or do you think it's all just physically the way it's affecting him?
I mean, with him specifically, it's hard to say. But in general, yeah, we know one of the last things to come back after an ACL injury is what we call getting over kinesiophobia, which is fear of movement or fear of re-injury. Mm-hmm. And so that's part and parcel. And then when you have another knee injury, it may just reinforce some of those things.
Yeah, and whenever you watch Kristaps play, do you see things in the way that he moves, the way that he plays, that's indicative of those two injuries still affecting him?
I mean, what you see right now when him playing right now, to me, it's just him getting up to speed with his fitness levels. And so I can't say I've watched him enough in detail over the years to really make a judgment on whether he's being tentative or not. That's probably for someone who watches him in more detail. But what you do see is a player right now who is struggling a little bit laterally, especially. And also, he's kind of conserving his movement a little bit more, which to me speaks to him trying to get back into NBA level fitness. Because I mean, as much as you have preparation off the court, nothing prepares you for the actual intensity, both mentally and physically, of the game.
Yeah, I think, like you said, talking about his mobility or moving laterally, I think I've noticed that too, especially on defense. He can't keep up with really many of the players that he's guarding. Do you know, like, how long does recovery take? We know how long it took for him to get back onto the court, but now that he's here and we see maybe these problems that he has, how long until that player is fully recovered and can be himself again?
Sure. I mean, typically what I see after so let's say a meniscus repair for him was on the lateral outside. Typically with that, as we know, about a 3-month recovery, which is what I said in the video, and that's actually came to fruition. I would expect, another a 2.5 month period, maybe a little bit more, depending on with his injury history, for him to actually get up to speed.
Okay. And then, like, based on what you know of his body type, do you think, like, does he actually get up to speed 100% to where he was? Or do you think there's a chance that this is kind of a lingering thing that he has to watch out for the rest of his career?
He certainly has to. I mean, he certainly has to watch out for it. I mean, especially with the ACL injury, we know that re-injury risk, either of that ACL or the other ACL, goes up, and injury risk all along the kinetic chain goes up. So after any major knee injury, you have to be more diligent and more cognizant of your strength and conditioning, and loading yourself appropriately. So that's something I'm guessing he was already doing.
Oh, like as part of his recovery or right now?
Even beforehand. I mean, after the ACL, I'm assuming they were being extremely diligent with him in that regard. And then when you add another insult, it just adds to that responsibility to be even more strict with your fitness levels.
Oh, okay. There was I think it was on the Ringers podcast. They were talking about players that are his height and how they tend to be injury prone. What's your take on that? Do you think that's true, that just by default he's going to have injuries because of his height? Or do you think it varies from player to player?
It's hard to say. I haven't seen really the data on it to really kind of make a valid assumption on that. I think we tend to pick and choose those players who do have issues. I think the one thing I have seen is that when these taller, larger players who have more load, I mean, when you have more weight through your body, Kristaps he's not like obviously he's not like a chubby dude or anything, but he's tall, which adds weight, but you're adding more weight to the impact that you're making. For example, there are certain muscles on your feet that take up to 9 times your body weight. So when you add 1 pound, that's now 9 pounds of force, right? So the bigger you are, it's adding more in that regard. From what I have seen, the trend I've seen is that once these big players start picking up injuries, then it can get difficult. However, like in the case of, let's say, Joel Embiid, right? He had injuries early on. He has now started to finally understand what it takes, the necessary steps it takes, whether it's through his own diet, whether it's through addressing his strength and conditioning, to really get out of those injury cycles.
Interesting. Do you think Kristaps could follow a similar path?
Yeah, I think so. The only difference with Kristaps is, he suffered a much more significant injury than Joel. Joel doesn't have an ACL injury history. He has a navicular fracture, which was his major one. I think he had also had a meniscus issue, I believe. But the question with Kristaps is yeah, I mean, he just needs, honestly, he needs, for me, in my opinion, if he can get a year or two out being relatively injury free, you're gonna have, certain nicks and knacks along the way, but avoiding those long layoffs, that's really the key, because you need consistency. Those layoffs really impact your fitness, and so it becomes that roller coaster. And it's those transitional points of when you coming back from injury and you're increasing intensity. That's when you really pick up that risk of picking up another injury. So if you can just get consistent play and be relatively injury free, I do think he can.
So there's been a lot of talk about how Kristaps should play, and a lot of this is just basketball styles in general. But looking at it from your perspective, looking at his medical history and his body type, what do you think would be the best way for him to play? There's always like playing in the post versus playing on the perimeter. What do you think would be the best way for him to be effective and hopefully minimize the risk of injury?
I mean, I think if the biggest thing you're trying to do is try to avoid high risk areas, whether that's driving into the paint with multiple people there, right? And so, I mean, in the post, you're getting leaned on. Yes, it's not truly high risk. When I look at high risk, it's some of those rebounding and what I call like dirty landing zones, or things of that nature. Like, for example, his ACL tear came when he went up, got bumped in the air, lost his balance, came down, and then he went to hyperextension with his knee. So that's what I see. But then again, it's almost like if you're constricting someone that much based off their injury, then it becomes a slippery slope, right? And then it's really that, okay, what should that person do or don't do? How much are we basing this around their injury, and how effective can they really be? I mean, from what I've seen with his playing style, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, he's far more comfortable in that face up or that perimeter spacing role, which suits him quite well when he's like the Kristaps that we know he's been in the past.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. I know that he does like being in the post, but he is most effective when, instead of like backing down a player, he faces up. And so that, I think, is also less, there's less impact on his body because he's just, turning around, facing up and taking a jumper, basically.
He's 7'3" with a high release. He can face up anyone, and once he burns that shot above his waist, you can't really contest it.
Yeah, I think right now, like a lot of the shots that he might be missing, it goes back to what you were saying about finding that rhythm and getting comfortable with your body again. I think the biggest concern for me is him on defense, because like you said, he is slow laterally, and that has a really negative impact on their pick and roll defense. And I think that's probably the biggest question for Mavs fans is he ever going to get back there? Is he always going to be this slow, or will he continue to progress and get back to where he's still effective on defense?
So the thing about defense, it's far more reactionary. There's still, of course, anticipation aspects, but it's more reactionary than it is on the offensive end. And so that's where that mental aspect can come into play as well, because when you're reacting, you have to really not be thinking about your body. You have to be able to be spontaneous. And that's one of the last things that does come back after injury, that freedom of movement and being able to move spontaneously. There's a word, there's a word for it, called proprioception, that can be impacted after knee injuries, which is your body's feedback to your brain about where it is in space. And so we know there's proprioceptive deficits following knee injuries. And so that can be part and parcel with him getting better as a defender and becoming more comfortable with those spontaneous reactionary movements.
That's a good point. I think I remember you maybe in one of your videos talking about how it's not just about healing physically, but I didn't realize, did you say that like our nerves have a memory, and even if mentally we feel fine, it's almost like instinct. Our body just does not want to move a certain way because the memory of that injury can affect you even if you don't realize it, even if you think you're over it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the brain essentially is imprinted with an injury, with negative experiences. And so going into a certain movement that may have caused you injury before, the brain is going to subconsciously be like, hey, don't do that. And so for the brain, it's a survival instinct because it got injured before. And so that's part of getting over that mental confidence aspect. And so, I mean, like, you see a lot of individuals after injuries where they're like, I just can't do this move, or I feel really tight in this position. And that's because they're muscle guarding. Their muscles are tensing up. And that's a reactionary response from the mind-body connection, because the brain is like, hey, dude, like, we got hurt in this thing before. I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because one of the things I notice whenever Kristaps is playing is that it looks like he's thinking too much. And that could be part of being in a new offensive scheme and, trying to find his rhythm. But I wonder if that's also part of it, of just being a little tentative with his movements and not being able to be reactionary. Like you said, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would be surprised if he wasn't. He's been through now 2 major knee injuries, right? He's coming back. So if he's not a little tentative, that's almost like, to me, like, it's something I would very, very much expect from a player in that position.
So if you had to put on pretend you're an NBA GM and what you know of his medical history and injuries, do you think it's worth it to hold on to him and ride this out? Or is there enough concern there to think maybe he's not the guy that we need? Like, worst case scenario, maybe we trade him. But just, is he like a surefire, let's hold on to and ride him out? Or is there a little bit of concern there if you're a GM making that decision?
I think there naturally has to be concern. The question is, how concerned are you? And 2 knee injuries, like we said, with larger players, we know there's a little bit more impact. The key thing for me, though, is figuring out, okay, what are his mechanics like? How is he progressing physically? But the real question as a trade aspect becomes that contract, right? Is he worth the money? Is he worth that salary? And that's the question about any trade. Is the risk reward worth it with that salary, to the fact that, yeah, he does have some knee injury history?
Yeah. And I think a lot of these are just open questions. There's things that just we don't know, and it's impossible to know. Like, we don't know if he is gonna get injured again. And so it is kind of like you said, that risk reward thing that they have to go through. Well, Raj, thank you so much for your time. A lot of that was super insightful. I think just the thinking about how it can affect his explosiveness, his reaction on defense, that was really helpful. I want to give you an opportunity to plug your where you're on Twitter, on the internet, so people can find you. You post so much helpful content, so please let people know where they can find you.
Sure. So it's all the same, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Just look up 3CB Performance, 3 Charlie Beta Performance, and find me, watch. I prefer comments, questions, whatever it is. The back and forth is always fun. So
awesome. And get on your YouTube channel. For everyone listening, you did 2 videos on Kristaps, his torn ACL and then the torn meniscus. I would highly recommend those. But thanks for being on. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's move on to our last segment. This past week, we got the first returns on All-Star voting, and I told you to not look at them so that we could do this segment. Were you obedient?
I did not look at them.
Okay.
I only heard one thing, and that was from the jump, and apparently that wasn't even right. So I think I'm good to go to be completely surprised and destroy your game.
Okay. Even though you never do that. So what I want to do is you have to guess the order of each section. So Western Conference front court, and then guards, and then Eastern Conference front court, and then guards. And we'll just do the top 5 of each one of those. Okay.
Okay. But what are the parameters that you've put in place here to make this unwinnable?
You just have to guess the name.
All right.
Okay. So let's start with Western Conference front court Number 1.
LeBron James.
Yes, correct. Oh, I should have gotten a sound effect. Ding, ding, ding. That was pathetic.
Just edit that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2.
Anthony Davis.
No. But,
Jokic?
yeah.
Oh,
Jokic.
okay. And then
Yeah.
Anthony Davis will be 3rd.
No.
Okay, then Kawhi Leonard?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then number 4.
Front court? There's only 3 front court and 2
Well,
guards.
there's 10. There's like 10
I gotta
results.
name all of them.
Yeah. Do you want
Wait,
to
I have to
only
name
do...
all 10?
No, just 5. Were you listening when I introduced
Yeah,
this?
I'm doing the 5 starting lineup. I have to do
Oh,
5
no,
from each position?
I meant 5
Okay.
from each. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't really listening. So,
Okay.
All right. So I have what, 3?
What's new? Yeah, you have
4.
3 so far.
No, I did Kawhi, Anthony Davis.
No, you did-
No.
LeBron,
LeBron?
Jokic, Kawhi, and number 4 is
Anthony Davis.
yes, and number 5 is
It better not be Paul George.
it's Paul George.
Oh my God. Well,
he's having a good
he's having a
season.
good year, but
It's almost as good as his MVP season. Yeah, LeBron is, let me think, he's not leading all voters, but he is second. He's second in all voters. He has almost 2.3 million votes.
Okay.
So, I mean, no surprise with that one. Okay, let's do the guards from the Western Conference.
Curry and Luka.
Yes, but what order?
Curry and Luka.
So Curry is number 1?
Yes.
And Luka is number 2?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be Curry and Luka.
Okay. Third.
Oh man. And now I got a Devin Booker.
No.
Okay. Oh, Lillard.
Yes,
Okay.
Damian Lillard. Okay. Lillard got less than 1 million votes, which I don't know.
He doesn't get the respect he deserves.
Yeah. Okay, number 4. This one, I was surprised. I was very surprised by this. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, because honestly, I haven't watched enough of their games to know. I know he's having a good season, but
This better not be Ja Morant.
it's Ja
Oh
Morant.
my God.
Yeah, it was Ja Morant. He's 4th.
I was going to say, based on your surprise reaction, I was going to think John Wall or Ja Morant.
No.
So Wall's
It's
not on there.
Ja Morant. Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
I mean, again, we don't watch the Grizzlies,
Grizzlies.
because they're the Grizzlies.
yeah.
But
But okay.
Respect.
Number 3, Lillard got 998,000 votes. 4th, Ja Morant got 257,000. So there was a huge drop off from that. But Luka got almost 1.4 million votes. I think he was like the 4th, 5th highest vote getter, maybe somewhere in there.
my big question, though, is
Okay.
where is...
Well, you haven't guessed 4th and 5th yet. No, you haven't guessed 5th yet.
Oh, 5th for guards, Lonzo Ball.
No, he's not on there.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Okay, let me think. It's not Devin Booker?
No.
Man, Devin Booker ain't getting no love. It better not be Chris Paul.
Spider-Man goes
Oh, Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Did you enjoy my...
No, I did not.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Donovan Mitchell, he got 236,000 votes. By this
that
point,
was
it's
the
kind of
entire
just
city
by
of Utah,
default.
Salt Lake City.
Yeah, someone's got to be in there. So it's like you got 200,000. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, Devin Booker was 6th. And Klay Thompson is 10th. I mean, I feel like...
I'd take Klay Thompson right now.
But, okay, if a player is injured and they've said he's not going to play for the season, he shouldn't even be on the ballot.
Those votes should go to somebody else.
Yeah, but he should not even be on the ballot.
None of that matters.
Okay.
The only thing matters is the future of the NBA.
Uh-huh.
Zion Williamson.
Oh, you want to know where he's
Where
at?
did he rank?
Okay, in the front court, 6th with 411,000 votes.
Little high for me.
Yeah,
but
he's ahead of Andrew Wiggins, Christian Wood, Brandon Ingram.
I guess
and
at
Carmelo.
some point there's just nobody else.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think Brandon Ingram should be higher. I think he should be 6th, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, let's do Eastern Conference front court. Number 1.
Durant.
Yep, 2.3 million votes. He is the highest vote getter.
Yeah.
2nd.
Giannis.
Yeah, 1.7 million. I'm surprised. I'm kind of surprised by that. 3rd.
Joel Embiid.
Yes. Interesting. Very good. Are you serious?
Well, after 3,
No.
there's nobody else in the West and the East that's any good.
You're forgetting a guy.
Okay. All right. Front court.
Yeah.
I mean, is Middleton considered a front court or a guard?
I don't know because he's not on here.
Okay. Okay. Eastern Conference.
He plays for a storied franchise.
Tatum?
Yeah, Jason
Okay,
Tatum. He's
right.
4th, yeah. And then 5th, I mean, apparently this guy is a forward now. I don't know. I mean, I have to look up to see if he actually plays that position. I guess he does. Otherwise, he couldn't be listed there. But
Is it Hayward?
no. Oh, yeah, he actually does play this position. Okay.
I don't know who it is.
Jimmy Butler.
Oh, yeah, he's small forward.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I still think of him as a shooting guard.
No, he plays small forward. Yeah, which kind of crazy he's on there since he hasn't really played all season. But, it's Jimmy Butler.
They made the
It's
finals.
kind of automatic.
So, yeah. And then Domantas Sabonis, he's 7th. Gordon Hayward is 9th. I feel like he should be higher.
Well, he plays for Charlotte.
Jeremy Grant is 10th. Now, granted, he has 134,000 votes, so it's kind of just someone's got to be on there. Okay, guards. Number 1.
James Harden or Kyrie Irving?
Nope.
Neither one of those.
Neither one. Yeah.
Hold on now. Trae Young.
No.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Give me a minute now. I got to...
He's put up like astronomically high numbers on a team that just flat out sucks. Has not won.
Trae Young.
No.
That's not fair. That's not fair. Zach LaVine?
No.
Oh my God.
I can't believe you're not thinking of this guy. We want him on the Mavs. Like, we dream about him. We have passionate dreams about him.
That's correct. Bradley Beal.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Yeah, almost 1.3 million votes. So 2nd.
Kyrie?
Yeah. And then 3rd.
Harden?
Yeah.
Okay. You got me second guessing myself now.
And then 4th.
Trae Young?
No.
Oh my God. Zach LaVine? Drew Holiday? Malcolm Brogdon? I'm just naming all the guards now.
Also,
I lost.
You forgot about Tatum earlier. So.
Oh, Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown.
This isn't fair. Like, at this point, I've lost the game. Can we just admit that? The Eastern Conference, I don't know.
Well, yeah, you lost.
Okay, I lost. Okay, Jaylen Brown.
5th.
5th. Trae Young.
Nope.
Oh my God. That is disrespectful.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do, pick
I'm not a
5th.
huge Trae Young fan, only because of the Luka Trae Young thing.
I know, yeah.
But this is disrespectful to the man.
So 5th is Zach LaVine.
I mean, come on. I love LaVine.
Yeah.
But Trae Young has...
He's got to be, yeah. I mean, I don't know, unless he's not having
I know
good
he
season.
literally is the worst defending point guard in the league.
He's the worst defender in the league.
Yes.
Yeah.
But come on, what the Hawks they're better this year, even though they've had some injuries.
Yeah. I was surprised too.
Where is Trae Young on there?
He's 6th.
Okay, behind Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he only got 368,000 votes, and he
Last
was
year
a
he was
starter.
at like 1 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he got a ton. So I don't know what happened. I mean, obviously I didn't vote for him last year anyway, so it's not like anything changed with me. But I don't know.
But man, like
people jumped off of that one
they
fast.
Were done. Yep.
Yeah, so those are the results. Luka is 2nd in the West. I feel like he's established himself as a perennial all-star. Like
I think that's
he probably
pretty clear, yeah.
will be a perennial all-star. I mean, unless crazy things happen. So yeah, and he's okay. So he was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He was the 7th highest vote getter.
Yeah, it's a little
That's
low.
a
I think the
drop.
Mavericks record has impacted that.
Yeah.
Like when your team is doing well, then SportsCenter's talking about you more
Yeah.
and all that. So I think that's impacted him.
But these last few games that were on national television, I wonder if that'll help.
I hope so.
With the voting.
Yeah.
And by the way, I know I plugged this already, but if you don't know all the ways to vote by now, there's an article on DallasHoopsCast.com. I lay it all out and make it super duper simple. So go check that out. But that's it for this episode. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, subscribe to Dallas Hoops Gamecast to hear Martin's post-game pods. I think that's pretty much it. Do you have anything else to add?
Nope.
Great. Okay. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.